The classic recruiter message. Hey Lauren, I think you'd be great in sales. And I was like, I have no idea what that means, but great. For example, like they're struggling with booking meetings on the phone. That's a really common one. And I think cold calling will always be something that people are always looking for coaching for. In every single SDR I've ever spoke to, they're like, yeah, like I'd love cold call coaching. They could be the best cold caller ever and they still want cold call coaching.
Who's the best SDR leader in the UK? This young lady might just be it. I had the absolute privilege to sit down with Lauren Reeves from Swap last month. She dropped so much knowledge. Every young seller who wants to make a career in SaaS sales should get a notepad, start taking furious notes. Lauren's truly inspiring. As well as being a great leader, she's also a coach. She's a mentor. She's worked with the SDRs of London for over 4 years now. And make sure you stick around till the end when Lauren shares some of the most inventive ways I've heard to get through to your clients. And probably most importantly, she settles the Franca Manca versus Dishoom debate once and for all. Sit back, relax, hope you enjoy. Cool, let's go. Hey, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today. So, look, it'd be great to get a little bit about your background and where you've come from. But I suppose my opening question would be, I think you joined or went to Cardiff University about 19 years after I'd left. So how does a journalism graduate from Cardiff University end up in, tech sales? I'd love to understand a bit more about that.
Yeah, I've definitely had the classic route that most people do, which is I ended up in sales,
Yeah.
basically. I when I went to university, I wanted to go to uni, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, like what do I like? So what can I do that as a degree? And I was like, oh, I quite like writing. I quite like like the media. So I was like, oh, I'll just do a journalism degree. And I loved the degree. Cardiff was brilliant. I mean, I love that city. Like if there was more opportunity in Cardiff, I would have stayed. 100%.
100%. Yeah.
Love that city so much. But there isn't, which is why I came back home because I'm from Kent, down the road from London. So I was like, well, I may as well go back home and get a job in London. And I started looking for a job in the like March time of my third year because I was like, I need to leave. I need to get a job straight away. I can't afford not to get a job straight away. So was on LinkedIn, and I got the classic recruiter message. Hey Lauren, I think you'd be great in sales. And I was like, I have no idea what that means, but great. That sounds really cool. Went to like a recruitment day thing. There was obviously some companies there. You had to do like an elevator pitch of yourself, and then they put you in like scenarios. And then I got a job. And I remember going home like, I've got a job. And my parents were like, doing what? And I went, something called business development. Don't really know what it means, but apparently you earn lots of money doing it. And they were like, oh, I've heard really bad things about sales. And I was like, we'll give it a crack. And honestly, I hated the first 6 months.
Yeah.
I hated it. And I tell that to all my reps as well. I'm like, the first 6 months were awful because you come in and they go, right, there's a phone. You start calling people that you never spoke to before, telling them about why they need your software. Whilst you're doing that, you then need to also email them and message them on LinkedIn, and keep track of all of that whilst booking meetings. And I was like, oh, that sounds dreadful. But I pushed through. And after about 6, 7 months, I then met a load of other SDRs. And that
Mhm.
is when I started to really, really enjoy the job. I think the one thing I found, especially in tech sales, is that community is just incredible. I was always told like, oh, it's really dog eat dog. Everyone's really competitive. Like you won't really form good relationships with people. And I found that to be the complete opposite. I actually think it's an industry where everyone wants to help each other. They're always wanting to give tips, advice, things that are working for them. And then I met Lewis Gadsden, who created SDRs of London, joined that community. And after that, fell in love with it, completely fell in love with it. Um, Oh, there you go.
Yeah, you go.
Fell in love with it. And everyone was so helpful. They were like, oh, have you tried this? And I was like, no. And they were like, give that a crack. Did that. And then after about being, I would say just over a year as an SDR, I realized quite quickly I didn't want to be an AE. I sort of looked at
Okay.
the AE role and I was like, that looks really dreadful. I was like, you could have a full pipeline, everything in your favor, and then literally in the space of a few days or a week, it could disappear, gone. And I thought, I don't like the sound of that. That sounds really
Mm.
dreadful. Because although you can be in a lot of control, there are so many things that you can't control. And then I was like, okay, like what do I want to do then? So I thought, oh, customer success maybe. That sounds like something I big part of the job I enjoy is building relationships, chatting to people, hearing about what it is that's affecting them. So I thought maybe I'll go customer success. And then I started mentoring and I started doing webinars and talking to people about the SDR role. And I was like, God, I really enjoy that feeling
Mm.
of telling someone, oh, this worked for me, give that a go, them doing it and it working. And I was like, oh, that feels really good. So that's when I thought, right, okay, I want to be an SDR manager. So I
Fantastic.
decided that after about a year to 18 months in the role. And then after that, it was just growing as an SDR still, looking for an opportunity from where I could get promoted into a manager. And then that's what happened. 2 years ago now, which is crazy. And I've been a manager ever since, and I love it so much. I find it so fulfilling. I think that it's definitely one of the hardest management roles in sales. Almost everyone turns around to me and they're like, I don't know why you'd want to be an SDR manager. They're like, I don't get it. Like, you don't get paid as much as a sales manager, which is true. You get probably paid half what a sales manager gets paid, but you've got the exact same responsibility. You're also managing new people in their career that have never done the job before. So it's like super challenging in that sense because you're teaching someone the world of work, what it takes to be a good person in work and the job.
Mm.
Um, but that's why I love it because then you see them grow and then
Yeah.
help them get promoted and then they just go off. They fly and then you're like, oh, look at them smashing their career. And it's just really lovely. I still talk to reps that I managed in the past. They still message me. I just think it's a really fulfilling role in comparison to some other management roles in sales.
Mm.
And here I am. Now I'm here. I'm at Swap, which is an e-commerce software company. It's flying. It's doing incredible. So I'm really excited to be there. And we grow from here, basically.
Fantastic. So, just to dig into that a little bit. So, when you started doing mentoring, was that via the SDRs of London? Was that because of your involvement there?
Exactly that. So they obviously would people would message and they'd be like, oh, like can anyone does anyone have any like time to like chat? And I was always a put a coffee in person. I've remained that way and I think I always want to be that way because network's really important to me. I know I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for the networking that I've done over the years. So I've always been like, yep, I can like let's have a coffee, let's have a chat. And then there'll be some people that they'd be like, right, can we do this again? And I'm like, yeah, of course we can. If we do it again. And then before you know it, I've met with them every month for 6 months. And then they're like, right, yeah, I'm getting promoted now. And I'm like, all right, bye. Off you go. Go get an AE mentor because I can't do that one. Um, and that was all through SDRs of London, which is just, it's honestly a really fantastic community. And I recommend anyone in any role in sales to go find a community that
Mm.
matches the role they're doing. There's so many out there, AEs, there's GTM ones, there's leadership ones. So, yeah. And then I had people recommending me, which was really nice. I'd get messages like, hey, like my SDR needs some advice. Would you mind mentoring them? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, of course I would. Like, that's nice. And it's just grown from there. And then I still now, I've got one person that I mentor every week for an hour. And that again, that was someone recommending me to their manager who then reached out to me. So yeah, I just find it really, again, fulfilling. I think fulfilling is just like such a word to summarize it. Um, yeah.
Well, it's really clear. I mean, you light up when you start talking about it. So it's really clear that you're passionate about it, and you really, you've got that kind of, yeah, I give a shit. I really care. Um, I'm interested to know, are there like common issues that people have when they come to you? Is it like the same two or three things, or is it really varied?
I would say it's normally very much similar, the same thing. So, for example, like they're struggling with booking meetings on the phone. That's a really common one. And I think cold calling will always be something that people are always looking for coaching for. In every single SDR I've ever spoke to, they're like, yeah, like I'd love cold call coaching. They could be the best cold caller ever and they still want cold call coaching. Because it's always changing. So people always want coaching on that. Time management, I think SDRs bless them, the worst at managing their time. And I think it's because they're new. They're new to the job. They most of the time are coming straight out of university. So they've gone from having all this pretty much free time, their lectures here and there, to now 9 till 5 and having to fit everything in a week. And I think they
Mm.
panic. So definitely time management. And I would say the third thing as well is lack of patience because people who go into sales tend to be very ambitious. They want to grow really quick, they want to progress really fast, they want to make all the money in the world. And it's like, it's okay, you can still do all that. Just pause. Like, take a moment to enjoy being in this role. The longer you're in the SDR role, the more successful you will be later in your sales career. And there's a really interesting stat. It's like, I think 60% of SDRs that are promoted before hitting 12 months fail as an AE. And so it's like stop like trying to jump a timeline. Just get into this role, really understand it, get good at discovery and like uncovering pain, and then you're going to be amazing as an AE. Because what happens is people move on too quick, forget that that's the most important part of a sales cycle is the need and the drive for whatever it is you're selling, and they go straight for the this is how much it costs, this is what we can do to help you, da da da. And then the prospect's like, well, I don't really care. Like I'm
Yeah.
kind of happy with what I've got because they're not digging in to the reason why they need it. And that's such a big part of the SDR role. And I think if you move on too quick, you forget. So yeah, that's a huge one. I'm constantly saying to my reps, just it's okay, it's coming. It's not going anywhere. You're 23 years of age. All right, you're fine. It's okay. Um, yeah. Then them three always come up.
Yeah, and that's really and so I mean, so I like, coach and mentor a bunch of people. I run a small sales community, and often the consistent problem is either I haven't got enough pipeline, or the pipeline I have got isn't moving through quickly enough. And I always think a lot of that comes back to, do you know how to build pipeline in the first place? So that's kind of skill one. So if you've been an AE or an enterprise AE for a while, and you've forgotten some of those basics, and that's kind of
Yeah.
really painful. And then secondly, actually, if you're just filling your pipeline with stuff that isn't particularly well qualified and you don't understand the need, it's not going anywhere. So you might think you've moved them through the sales process, but they just sit at the end and they ghost you. They're not signing because you didn't do a good enough job kind of up the top.
Yeah.
So those everything flows downhill from that one skill.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that a big part of that, one obviously lies in an SDR handing over good enough ops, but it also relies on the AE being able to say to their SDR why something isn't good. Because I think you see two things. You see either a really, really strong BDR AE relationship, and because they get along so well and they really care about each other and they both want to succeed, the AE knows that if they accept that opportunity, then that goes towards the SDR's target. So that's like,
Mm,
great. Like their SDR's happy, they're succeeding, they're going to keep booking them stuff. Forgetting that if you move something into your pipeline that actually wasn't that great, you were just helping out your BDR or SDR, then you're screwing yourself over.
mm,
Then you get the other end of the spectrum where you've got an AE who is so militant about what they let in that they actually forget that a big part of their role is to make someone want to buy their solution. And that's not the BDR's job. That's actually the AE's job. The BDR's job is to understand if it's the right person, see if there's pain that we can solve, and see if it's something that they're genuinely interested in for now. If they can uncover that, that should go in. It's now down to
mm,
the AEs to actually keep the interest, keep uncovering the pain, show the value in what it is they're offering. And I think sometimes the AE wants like the perfect opportunity and forgets they always have to work for it
mm,
as well. And so they don't bring anything in because they're like, no, 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 they're not ready to buy yet. They're 6 months out. Okay. Well, then try and make them not 6 months out. Try and convince them this is something they need now. Uncover it a bit. So yeah, it's I think that dynamic is so important because it has obviously a negative impact on the SDR BDR if the AE is too strict, but then it'll have a negative impact on the AE if they're too nice. So that middle ground is where you want to be.
so that's a really interesting point. So when you're coaching your like SDRs and BDR mentees, what are the top pieces of advice you give them in terms of building that really good relationship with their AE? So that it's that middle ground, that successful kind of dynamic that you're looking for.
The first thing I always say is to actually remind the AEs that they are not better than them just because they're an AE. And I think that sometimes AEs, because that's the role the BDR wants to go into most of the time, they're like, yeah, like I'm their senior. Like I'm really good in comparison to you. And it's like, no, you're not. Like without that SDR, you'd have to go self-source every single bit in your pipeline. Do you want to do that? Because I can tell you now, most AEs don't. So actually, you're not better than your SDR. You should like treat that person as your partner. They're your equal, they're your partner. And I tell that to my BDRs as well. I'm like, do not let your AE boss you around. You are prospecting every single day. You know your prospects probably better in some ways than your AE does. So you remind them of that. You keep reminding them, like, well, actually, no, what I'm finding working really well is when I talk about this. That pain's resonating more than that pain. So I'm going to focus on that. You know, you're the one booking the meetings. So that's the first thing. Remember that you are on par with your AE. They are not better than you. Then the next thing I always say is that what they get taught by their manager does override what they get taught by their AE. Because what
Got it.
happens is AEs love to teach bad habits. Because that happens. Like once you've moved on from the SDR role, you kind of like you forget all the like ins and outs of like what you should do in the role, and you're like, oh yeah, like just do that, just do that. And then I'm in my one-to-one, and I'm like, why are you doing that? Oh, my AE said I should do that, and I'm like, no, 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 no. We don't do that. Okay.
Have you got an example? Are you thinking about something specific or something you could share?
Yeah, so I think one example is when it comes to like territory outreach. So obviously every business does it very differently. So we do ABM based. So they get 300 accounts for the quarter and they work those 300 accounts. Every quarter it changes. Then you obviously got territory, etc., etc. And there's always the way I teach them to outbound to their accounts, and then there's the way the AE wants them to outbound to their accounts. There's normally a lot of similarities, but there will always be differences. And one thing that I find a lot is that obviously if an AE, especially if an AE is panicking, they want to take a lot of control over their accounts. And they're like, no, 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 you don't touch those ones. I'm doing those ones. And what actually happens is because the AE hasn't got the same amount of time as the BDR, they're not actually outbounding those accounts to the extent the BDR could be outbounding those accounts. So then actually nothing's really happening to the
Mhm.
accounts that the AE is working on. So then the SDR BDR is losing out on those accounts because the AE's told them to not touch them. They're not actually going anywhere. And then the BDR gets frustrated because they're like, well, I could be outbounding those accounts. Like I could do it and they're telling me no. What do I do now? So it's always a case of me being like, right, you need to sit down with your IE and you need to say, I've got some ideas. Let's talk through it together. I think it makes sense if I do this outbounding to those accounts you're focusing on, and you only focus on that person and that person. But everyone else in the account, I go after. So then that way the AE still feels like they're in control.
Mhm.
They're like they still feel like they've got a grasp on it, but then the BDR and SDR is not being left out by not outbounding those accounts. And I see that a lot. That happens more often than it should. I think that the AE just I get it. Like they want to build their pipeline. They're like, right, I'm getting close to end of quarter now. Like I'm X amount off my target. What can I do? I need to build, I'm gonna go in outbound. I'm gonna build pipeline. And it's good they want to do that because some AEs won't bother at all. They'll just sit back and I'll just be like, nah, I don't outbound anymore. I'm an AE. I'm above prospecting. You're not. Um, so that dynamic happens a lot. And then I would also say another example is I'll give them cold call coaching. I'll be like, right, this is how you ask questions. This is what a good opener is. A/B test it. Like what works for me might not work for you. We're all different. We've all got different tones of voice. So you need to find that. And then they'll go in to do like a cold call session with their AE or whatever. And their AE will be like, no, 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 you need to do that opener and only that opener. And you need to pitch it like this because they are telling them what works for them.
Mhm.
Because I think they forget that actually just because it works for them doesn't mean it'll work for their BDR because they could be different. They could have a different
Mhm.
approach. They could have a different tone of voice. And then obviously again the BDR is like, oh, I don't want to upset my AE, so I'm gonna do what my AE tells me. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Remember who's actually in charge of your job here. This guy. And then yeah, they're like, okay. Once they're further in the role, they get much better at obviously telling their AE no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But when you're new, when you're 6 months in, even 9 months, you're still a little bit like, oh, I don't want to piss them off. Um, Yeah, classic.
And I can imagine it because having done a lot of different kind of, well, different names for AE roles, but basically AE roles, there'll be accounts you're particularly kind of sensitive about, and you're like, wow, I don't really want, don't mess that one up.
Yeah.
So you're trying to figure out how to do that. But I think what your approach there in terms of saying, well, look, you look after these two, three contacts that you've got that engagement with, and then we'll go after these other ones you're not really talking to and kind of expand. And like it's a collaborative thing. I think it's a um, fantastic approach. And we're breaking down that paradigm that no, these are my special accounts that I don't want to give away.
Oh, it's so
Like a
funny, honestly.
I know. I know. Humans are strange. We're all weird, aren't we? We've all kind of got our own little things. And when you get to that kind of, particularly if it's your number and you're looking at it thinking, oh, no, that's my baby. I don't want anyone going in really. I used to do that with marketing as well because I remember working in companies where they create like ABM plans, and I'd look at some of the email copy and I'd go, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. And whether I was right or wrong, it doesn't really matter. It's like the fact that I was doing that classic thing that you described of saying, no, no, you're not getting you're not getting your hands on my babies. Um, but that's really, and then you touch on cold calling. So that was kind of one of the things. And this is I suppose this is the ebbs and flows of outbound really. Because when I was coming up, cold calling was really big. It was really saturated, really easy to get people's phone numbers. I remember like one of the jobs I had a yellow pages and a pen, right? That was kind of, and I just, so you've gone to that, and then email became this really clever channel to book meetings, and actually it was a really efficient way of doing it. And it feels like we've kind of come full circle. So where you are today, where we are today, what are you seeing as kind of those best channels, or is it really more about actually how you use combination of all three, four, five channels? I'd really love to get your view on that.
Yeah, definitely multi-channel for sure. You have to be using all channels. If you're not using all channels, then you're missing out. So if you're not cold calling and you're doing everything else, you're missing out. Same with LinkedIn, video, email. Like you have to be doing all of them. I think that every BDR gets results on different channels because there is going to be a channel that you're naturally stronger at. So there's natural cold callers. They're really, really good on the phone, but their email copy is not that great. They still do it. They have to email, but like sometimes you read them and you're like, yeah, you did not do an English degree. Uh, but then you get them on the phone and they are brilliant. They can uncover the pain. There's such conversationalists. Like you're like, wow, like this is brilliant. How was that even a cold call? And then you've got other people that are fantastic on LinkedIn. They just know how to message properly, post, like do the right sort of bumps on LinkedIn, and they book on their meetings on that. And you get that for every BDR. But I think you will always see it go round as what's the favorite channel. You see this all the time. I remember COVID, everyone was like, you can't cold call anymore. No one's in the office. No one can do the office line. Everyone hates being called on their mobile. Phones out the picture, which is a lie because that was probably the perfect time to cold call because everyone was sat at home with their phones. So actually the opposite of that. But video took off. Video was brilliant in 2020, 2021. Vidyard blew up. That's when they became really big. Then you started seeing obviously these other companies that do video that come in. Like you've got, like Loom and Hinterview and all of that. And that was a channel that I had lots of success on during COVID was video. And then now you hardly see video. It's
Mm.
kind of like disappeared a little bit. I guarantee in the next sort of year, video will come back around again because it kind of just does this. Um, Email's always there. People hide behind email. People will always hide behind email because they're scared and they're panicked and they don't want to put their face out on video and they don't want to get on a cold call and mess up. So you will always get reps hide behind that. It works. Email does work. Is it the most successful channel? No, but I have seen reps that book a ton of meetings off email because they just are really good at structuring an email that gets the point and it's short, it's pain focused, it's simple language, and that works for them. Um, but yeah, I don't understand why cold calling is so controversial. You just see so much of it on LinkedIn, like cold calling's dead. Like if you're cold calling now, da, 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 like yeah, it's so strange. It's so strange. But I will always be multi-channel. Always, always push multi-channel. If there's a channel, you need to use it. If you're not using it, you're missing out on prospects because you got to meet the prospects where they are, not what channel you prefer.
Mm.
That's what I always say. Just because you prefer email doesn't mean your prospects do. And just because you prefer answering the phone doesn't mean your prospects do. Like you have to get them where their channel is. I'm LinkedIn. If you message me on LinkedIn, I reply. Whereas if you cold call me, I'll answer it if I'm with my team because I always want them to hear a cold call. But like I'm in meetings all the time, so I very rarely answer cold calls. I'm like on a call and I look at it and I'm like, phone down. Don't even because I can't handle the time. So email, you don't really get me an email either. I
Mm.
linked my channel. So find me there. I think it's obvious as well. I post how much on LinkedIn? A
Yeah, I
good,
know.
a good prospect would dive into my LinkedIn and be like, God, this is a gold mine. Like she shares so much on here. There's loads I can message her about. And yet it's one of the channels I get. I get hardly any outbound on LinkedIn.
Bizarre,
Mm.
bizarre. And it's interesting because like so I suppose just unpacking what you said in a couple of things. It sounds like some of it's down to individual where their strengths are. If they're great at copy, if they're great at that side of things, and they're kind of email focused, they can be quite successful. But I always think with email, it's the hardest to master, but the easiest to scale, right? So the
Yes.
cheat code for email is just volume, right? But and things like Clay are coming out now, which can kind of help make that easier. And I'm still getting my head around. I think I'm too old for Clay and Airtable and things like that. They didn't kind of make sense to me.
Yeah,
But
I need to learn it. But it's scary. Everyone I've spoke to that says it, they're like, yeah, that at first it takes so long to get it going that
mm,
it's very like overwhelming. But once it's done and it's set up,
yeah,
it's great. But it's that, well, I haven't got time for that bit.
no,
So
really,
I'll,
yeah.
we'll both
I
cross that bridge at some point.
exactly, yeah. And I think I found somebody on Fiverr who can teach me how to do Clay, so I'm going to just pay somebody to show me how to do it and get through the pain. So there's the email bit. And then if they're more verbose, if they've got better like conversational skills, then they tend to do better on the phone. Is that what you find? And it's almost like rep specific
Yeah.
rather than it being, do you know what, as an organization at Swap, we think this is the way you act. But it's like, no, do you know, what's your personality? What works for you? And kind of just double down on that.
Yeah. And another thing I also say is that I have like these coaching sessions where the reps will come with 4 or 5 accounts that they're struggling to get a response from, or they're warm, they're opening their emails, like they're calling, but they're just like not getting over the line. And I always say, like, okay, like what's the prospect responding to? What are you getting them on? Are you getting them on LinkedIn? Are they opening all your emails? Are you having phone conversations? And every time they'll be like, "Oh yeah, like they're like on the phone. I spoke to them on the phone. When was the last time you called them? Oh, like last week. Okay, why aren't you calling every day? Like that's the channel that that prospect clearly favors.
Mm.
So still send your emails, still try and message them on LinkedIn, but you need to put all most of your time into the phone because that's what is getting them. Whereas there'll be others where like they're opening their emails like 3, 4 times at different times as well, that they're coming back to the email. And it's like, okay, well, still call them, but now you need to look at the emails that they're opening the most. What was it in that email? What was it
Mm.
focused on? Which pain point? Go back and now do a really specific email focused on that pain that you spoke about before that they clearly like were interested in, and make it so they have to reply to it because it's so relevant to them. And I think that sometimes you're so like, oh, I just need to do everything. I need to do everything. That like sometimes that's just the strategic part like disappears a little bit. But that's where it's your job as a coach and manager to come in and be like, right, let's focus on down now. Like what's working really for this account. And I think that's where like the right manager can make a difference for a rep, because
Yeah.
otherwise they'll just keep doing what they do, which is hitting their call dials every week, like sending out their emails, messaging on LinkedIn, and like forgetting to be like very prospect specific, and then also focusing on what works for them as well as a
Hmm.
rep. They just get into like the rhythm of it, and then they turn around and say they're bored. And you're like, how can you be bored in this job? And then you're like, oh, because you're literally doing the same thing every single week. You're not personalizing in certain ways. You're not digging into accounts in certain ways. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's my kind of my favorite sort of tactic at the moment, and I've been using this for a little while with quite good effect. Is you call and you leave a voicemail. My voicemails are always, "Sorry, I missed you. I'll call you back." It's never like, "Call me back." I then send a text to say, "I called you and I left you a voicemail. I'll drop you an
Yeah.
email," and then I'll send an email And then I'll take their email address and I'll plug it through Slack, through Google Chat, and through Teams to find out which of those they use. And actually, if they're on Teams, I think is the one where it kind of tends to work the best, because Office 365, quite a lot of small businesses use that. You can message them directly on Teams. So you drop the email address in, and it'll show you if it's an account. Now, if it's a big account, they might have security lockdown, seems to be
Yeah.
properly federated. But if they're a smaller business who's using us on Office 365, they'll let you send them a message. So it might be like call, voicemail, text, email, and then 2 days later, Teams message, point them towards the email. I've dropped you an email, worried about be caught in spam, so I thought I'd connect with you on here. And that kind of little cycle is quite a good way. And then it'll follow up with LinkedIn as well. But that kind of,
That's pretty interesting. I've never even heard of trying to message on like Slack or Teams or that's really interesting actually.
yeah, it's kind of, I've got because I run my own business, I've got my own Slack, I've got my own Google, and I've got my own Teams. And yeah, you just find the one that they're on,
Hmm.
and they don't see the message, but they see a request to
Yeah.
connect or request a message. And if they click into that, they've seen you do the other stuff, and they click into that because they're interested. Actually, then boom, you've got a channel. You can see it's great because even if you're not connected, you can see if they are red, amber, or green. So you know if they're on Do Not Disturb, you know if they
Right.
are busy, you know if they're away, and you know if they're available. And then you can call them on Teams. Now I've never done that because I think that's probably a bit like that class. I don't know. Some people FaceTime cold call.
Oh
I'm not
yeah,
really
no,
into that, but
I,
maybe for a
I
dad.
I had a prospect try
Did
FaceTiming me.
you?
First time I'd ever experienced it, and I literally was just staring at my phone like this. I was like, what? Ugh. I was like,
I
no,
know.
absolutely not. I was like, I'm not gonna FaceTime you. I don't know who you are.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that. But like your point about video, like sending a Loom video via Teams to somebody, is
Yeah.
probably quite a nice little way of doing that as well. But yeah, it's a really interesting little tactic that kind of works quite well that I've been using recently. So
No,
there
that's
you go.
yeah. I never even knew. I genuinely didn't know you could do that. But it makes sense because it's a request, and then if they accept it. But I've not heard people talk about that. I'm gonna bring that up. I'm gonna ask some
E-
people about it.
and even if they don't accept it, you can if you find their connection on Teams and you start to type a draft message, so
Yeah.
hi, it will show you very quickly. It will find right they're do not disturb or they're green or whatever. So the idea is like I will write a message and leave it and wait until I see green and then
And
ping.
then send it. How did you discover that?
Um, Years ago, I worked for a company that we'd federated with some of our customers. And so I would just try it and it was just randomly doing that. And then I think I saw somebody talk about it when Office 360, because it moved from being an on-prem solution into the Microsoft Cloud solution. And
Mm.
somebody said, oh, you can do the same thing as long as they're just on Office 365. So I was like, okay. And it might be a Microsoft rep, it might be somebody like that. It's like, I mean, the other classic one, and we're kind of, if you're ever trying to sell to somebody at Amazon, for example, the
Yeah.
best way to do that is via Chime, which is their own internal messaging app that you can download for free. So if you've got their Amazon email address, you download it, you put Chime in, and you can, again, it's a request to connect,
Yeah.
and then you can build a conversation off the back of that. But yeah, it's like all these little things, little guerrilla tactics, just
Yeah.
catching people. They tend to work, don't they? But they
Yeah.
work for a period of time, and then like people get wise.
Yeah. And the thing is that like you have to because think about it, like there's so many channels now that people are using. Like you've got WhatsApp, but then you've got normal text or iMessage, and then you've got social media. And like there's just our attention is so divvied up by all these different things. Like you just got to try everything and see
Yeah,
which one sticks. Like I even say to like my reps even because we outbound to brands. So I'm like they've all got an Instagram.
yeah.
Give them a message. See if you can message the brand on Instagram and then see if you can find the brand on Instagram. I think my favorite thing that I get is I can't find any contact details. Can't find anything. And I'm like, you can't find anything. Anything? And they're like, no. I'm like, have you ever heard of a business to not have an email? And they're like, no. I'm like, well then, they definitely have an
They
email.
definitely have
I
an
went,
email.
have you tried to figure out the format? I went, have you just sent and seen if it bounced or not? And they're like, no. And I'm like, just guess.
Yeah.
First name dot last name at brand.com. First name at brand.com. Initial of first name, last name at like there's the standard format of
Mm.
emails. Give them all a go, see which one doesn't bounce, and then boom, you've got their email. Like
Yeah.
you don't need these data tools to for it to like be there. Like you can just guess. And it's like there's we obviously reach out to like quite like independent brands as well, like boutiques, they're small. And they were like, oh, like I can't find anything on this brand. I can't find anything. And I was like, all right. I was like, can you find the founder? And they were like, no. I went, okay, give me a sec. Went on the Instagram. I went onto Company's House, found the name of the person that owned it on Company's House, went onto Instagram, went onto their following, found them following the brand because obviously it's their brand. And I was like, there you go.
There you
And they
go.
were like,
There you go.
how did you
That,
do that? And I'm like, you need to think outside the box, guys. Like you need to think like they obviously have people working for them. Like this brand doesn't just exist. We're not at the point now where AI is running brands yet. Like we'll probably be there in 10 years, but it's not quite there. So like you've got to go and look for them, think about it. Like just don't rely on these tools. Like they're fantastic, but I think they actually have become a block for a lot
yeah.
of sales people as well.
I mean, I'm so glad you mentioned Company's House. Like I use that all the time for some of the same reasons you highlighted there in terms of you find who the people on the board are and so on.
Yeah.
But I think if you read those company reports, and often they're a little bit out of date and so on and so forth because they file them so late and so on. But oftentimes you'll get a view of their revenues, you'll get a view of how many people they're hiring, whether they're firing, you'll get a view on whether they've got private equity investment or it's venture capital investment, you'll get a view on their strategy, what they're trying to achieve, the acquisitions they've made. And it's not even that long. You normally get them in paragraphs. You don't even take forever to.
Yeah.
It's not like the BP annual report that's 1,000 pages long. It's 5 or 6 pages of A4 that you can just look through and go, okay, they're making these three, and then all of a sudden you've got something to talk about when you're doing your reach out as well. And I just think that's such an underutilized tool in the UK by sellers at the
Yeah,
moment. It's Company House.
I agree. I think it's that classic thing of like obviously people do what they know and all the sort of SDRs, BDRs coming into sales now, they know a sales world where there is a tool for them to have everything. Like there is a tool for you to do loads of dials. There is a tool for you to get your emails and your numbers. There's tools for videos. There's like it's just, you can automate LinkedIn DMs now, which I think is mental. Like
Yeah.
there's just a tool for everything. And I think that it stops reps like realizing like actually like let's go back a bit like what were they doing before because these tools it did exist like I also came into sales when we had tools like this but there wasn't as many even now and that was 6 years ago like it's crazy how fast it all changes and it's like, okay, throw it back. Like before technology, sales was still a thing. People still sold. So like, what were they doing? Like they were going and they were finding, they were going to offices and they were actually trying to like go and see them in person. Like that's how they did it. To do that, go back. Like I say to the reps, like one of them, she went around to all the different stores, like that were in that one area, and got a picture in front of it. And I was like, send that. It shows that you've gone out your way to go to the store of your brand, be like, look, I love your brand so much. I've come to visit your store in London. Please talk to me because I want to make your brand even better. She like that's gonna stand out far more than like, hi, I talk to brands like you that are struggling with da 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 da. Like
Yeah.
just you're like come on like you've got this like just think about it a little bit deeper sometimes but we're all products of our environment and we're in an
Mm,
environment where everything is just given to us now it's just
yeah.
given like, oh I want a new recipe I'll just go on Google and be like
Yeah. Yeah.
recipe oh I need to figure out what I can eat tonight that's within my goals for my protein I'll go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT and it'll spout out a meal for me like we just I love it. I still obviously I love it. I'm not one of those like, oh, back in the old days. But it has meant that people aren't using that sort of like strategic way of thinking about things anymore. So I'm hoping that will come back.
Yeah. And I do think until you've been thrown out of a building because you're knocking on doors Like you haven't lived the sales, but I remember like several times being thrown out. It's quite a terrifying experience at the time. You look back and go, "Do you know, no, it was quite good fun."
Yeah.
And then the other thing I teach more to enterprise reps, but I think it kind of applies, and you kind of touched on it there as well. It's actually trying to become a customer of your client or your target prospect. So, like in your example, you buy a handbag and you try and send it back, and you deal with their complaints contact center. You get engagement, you understand more about the business, so then you can like start to map out who's involved. And I guess it's a bit more effort, but if it's a a key prospect, it's something often's worth doing, just experiencing what it's like to be a customer of theirs, because then you can give them real life feedback as well.
Yeah. That's actually a great idea, because what we've had is you've had people like actually go to buy something, like genuinely buy something from a brand, and like they had their duties and taxes weren't on their website, so then obviously they get the letter and da 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 da. So then we've obviously then dealt with customer service because they actually were dealing with customer service, and then we have used that in our outreach. It's like, oh, my friend or myself bought from your brand, da da da. I never thought of actually just buying it to then immediately send it back to actually see what it's like. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, and there's not if you can become a customer of the customer you're trying to
Yeah.
get into, then you just have a unique in. I mean, I remember sitting down with, oh, it might have been, for the sake of argument, let's say it was the CIO of British Airways. I don't think he was he was like one below, but he was, he was up that kind of echelon. And my boss at the time had flown him from Madrid, and he had the BA app on his phone. He's like, "Oh, your app's down. Can I just show you this?" And he was still, and it was so powerful because off the back of that, this
Yeah.
guy then just explained exactly how their back end worked, where the problems were, where the challenges were. And that was kind of like, great, okay. Then you're having a conversation. You're not talking about yourself, your product, or some other organization you may or may not have helped. You're talking about your business, what's going on with you, and so on. So I think, yeah, the more as sellers we can get into our customers' shoes and experience, what they're trying to achieve. Because ultimately, and your organization is trying to do this as well. Like you're ultimately trying to serve not your customers, but your customers' customers. You're trying to make their experience better, so there's reduced friction, and so they buy more, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, interesting. Let's change gears really quickly for a little bit. So, you are, do you still live down in Kent, or are you living in London these days?
I'm in London now. Yeah, I've done the
Okay.
classic, got myself up to Battersea,
I was going to ask north of the river or south of the river, but it's good that you're south of the river. I like that.
I will
That's
always
good.
be south of the river.
Very good, very good. We were Wandsworth, Balham, Streatham. So rent,
Nice.
bought a flat, bought a house. And then now we're down in Cornwall, so it's like I'm really far away. But as a Londoner, so I've got a few questions, but quick fire questions. Blank Street or London Grind?
I don't drink coffee.
You don't drink coffee. That's probably good for you, to be fair, but
Yeah. And do you know what? It's so funny. I feel like coffee's the new smoking area in a
is
business,
it
because
really?
everyone goes to get coffee.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we're gonna go get coffee. And I'm like, I don't drink coffee. And I feel like 20 years ago it would be, oh, we're gonna go for a cigarette. And it would be like, do you know the episode of Rachel and Friends?
Friends, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that, but now I think it's coffee.
Like, but I was going to bring that up because when you started talking about the coffee and smoking thing, because I literally had that. I remember I was there were four of us running different regions at O2, and our new boss, lovely guy, he called Marek, he smoked, and only one of the four of us who worked for him smoked. This guy called Simon, and we'd have these meetings, and then hit Simon and Marek would go and have a cigarette and come back, and something had changed, and I was like, I got to start smoking.
Yeah, yeah. And that's
Got to
that's
start
I
smoking.
feel like it is a coffee. I
Yeah,
But we have a blank street literally directly opposite the office. So if I am for whatever reason, then there's been like two or three times I have gone down, I've got a blank street at 2 p.m. when I've needed that
yeah.
post bump.
Do you do tea or hot chocolate, or do you
I
just
do
like
tea. I
tea?
love a
Okay.
cup of tea.
Mm.
Um, but do you know what? It's because I used to be a smoker, and
Ah,
I
okay.
started smoking quite young. And I said to myself, I was like, I can't be addicted to caffeine and cigarettes. I was like, that's a recipe for disaster. So I like the taste of coffee. Like I do
Mm.
like coffee, but I refused to let myself rely on it. And now I don't
Yeah.
smoke. So now I'm just caffeine
Oh,
and cigarette free. So
brilliant. Happy days. Okay, so here's a different one. Dishoom or Franca Manca?
Oh, that's hard. Dishoom's good when you want like a bit cheaper but a good meal. When you're like, right, I'm gonna go for a Dishoom. That's a really nice meal. But then Franca Manca's changed pizza for me. No pizza's the same ever since Franca. I have more Francas than I do a Dishoom. So
Okay,
maybe
let's go.
I've got to go pizza. I've got to go for Franca.
Go Franca. The guy who founded that, he used to run a cafe in Balham near where we used to live, and he put us onto it because they had the first store within Brixton Market. He was like, "Kind of check this out," but he's since sold up and it's now private equityed up and it's everywhere. But yeah, it was. I remember the first time we tried that, I was like, "That this is incredible."
Yes.
Um,
I can't. I feel like now when I have a normal pizza that's not sourdough, it doesn't feel the same.
it's not the same.
It's like, oh, this actually feels a bit icky. Whereas when I have a sourdough, I'm like,
It's so good,
"Oh,
so good. And here's a Cardiff one, and this might date me, so I'm not sure if this is still the same, but Jive Hive or Quids in.
oh, so Quidzin is still a thing. Drive Hive
Okay,
must have changed to something.
Jive Hive was Wednesday.
Oh, so would that have been SU Wednesday?
Yeah, sports night.
YOLO. It's now called YOLO.
YOLO. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's now called. It might have changed since I've been there because they redid the whole student union.
Yeah.
But oh, I ended up at Quidzin far more than I did the SU
Did you?
because I wasn't in any sports. And
Hmm.
obviously Wednesday was like the big night where like all the sports congregated and then like obviously everyone would go with their mates that were in sport. And I didn't have none of my mates were. So
Hmm.
we was out on the other nights more than a
Yeah.
Wednesday. So yeah, quids in.
Very good. Very good. Oh, brilliant. Listen, this has been really, really enlightening. I suppose what like top tips would you give to any aspiring BDRs or SDRs who want to get into the space?
I would say the main things that people are gonna be looking for in interviews is that you are coachable, that you have a hunger to be successful, but also that you don't have a huge ego. At least that's what I always look for when I'm hiring. I want people that work hard and have got that ambition, but they're not going to be horrible and like doggy and all of that in the workplace. Um, Curious is another really big thing. Like show that you're curious, show that you are really interested in sales and growing and that you just want to learn and you want to develop. That's really, really important. I would also say another top tip is don't panic. You're going to feel really useless and you're going to feel really bad at the job in your first 3 to 6 months. That's so normal. You just got to keep learning, keep growing. Go and find other people outside your organization that are in sales. That's the best thing you can do for your own development. Because if you're in that silo, like hopefully you will have really good coaching and mentorship and support in your business. But if you don't, you need to go find it because then otherwise you'll fail. So go and find people in sales that you can go and learn from. And last but not least, just be patient. Be patient in your career. Like the beautiful thing about sales is that it will never disappear. Sales is always going to be around as a career because people always want to think people to buy whatever it is that they're selling. So you'll always have some job somewhere. So enjoy it. Like, don't get too greedy and try and jump too soon. You will only screw for yourself if you do that. And don't be scared to not be an AE. It's okay not to be an AE. Everyone says you need to be an AE. You don't. If you want to be a manager, be a manager. If you want to go into customer success, go into that. Go into partnerships. You do not have to be an AE. So if it doesn't sit right, that is literally fine. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So people can find you on LinkedIn. That's where you live.
Yes.
And you post your wonderful videos. And are they working for you? You get the kind of engagement you're looking for. They're driving what you need.
Yeah, do you know what? It's actually crazy. Like I get almost like a million impressions on a
Brilliant.
post, which is insane. Um I do it because I love doing it. And then I
Mm,
also do it because I don't see very many female sales leaders posting on LinkedIn. I
yeah.
see a lot of male sales leaders and I see a lot of female SDRs and
Mm-hmm.
AEs, but I don't see very many female leaders. So
Mm.
I also feel like it's important for me to show that women can go into leadership and they will go into leadership, and it's okay to be themselves within sales as well. You don't have to fit this box that people think that
Yeah.
have. So I just find it really, really I just enjoy doing it. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
Luckily, it does lead to opportunities like this. I get to meet new people. I get invited to go and do webinars and stuff. So like it does help my own development on the side of it, but it just comes from a place of love. And then
Yeah.
all the good stuff comes from anyway.
It it shines through as well. I really like, the natural kind of way you do it, and the some of the insights that you share and you get from the team. I think it's great. So yeah, keep on keeping on, I suppose is what I'd say. It's inspiring. So good on you.
Thank you.
Um, I will. I'll send you a copy of the recording so you can use
Lovely.
it yourself. I'll probably. I'm really bad. I'm really slow at editing, so I probably won't go out until sometime in mid-March, I'd imagine, just because like I know what I'm like. Editing's my least favorite bit. Um, but mate, this was really interesting. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything any way I can give back? I can help you. I can share something, point in someone else's direction, whatever. And if you don't know now, you want to come
Yeah,
back
let
to
me
me at
have
any
a
point, that's
think.
fine.
I'm sure there definitely is. There always is in this. So let me have a think, and I obviously I can message on LinkedIn.
Yeah, please. That's where I live as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you, mate. I hope you don't get ill too soon then. Um,
Yeah, you'll see. I'll probably post about it on LinkedIn, so you'll know about it.
and have a fantastic weekend, mate.
Yeah, and you. Thank you so much.
No worries.
See you
Cheerio. Bye
later.
bye.
Cheers.